Welcome to today's session. We have Bonnie and Pam here as our presenters today, and our topic today is all around building strategies for resilient security while enabling innovation. They're going to dive into governance, privacy compliance, and automation across integrations. We do seek to provide an event today that respects all individuals, so please assist us in delivering a safe environment for everyone. We do deliver 3 of these sessions for our state and local government and higher education customers each month. We will be taking a break here in December and resuming again in January. If you have some topics you'd like us to keep in mind for our planning, please go ahead and drop those in the chat today, and we'll take consideration of those in our future sessions. To minimize any distractions and background noises today, we do have the lines muted, but feel free to drop questions during the presentation in the chat, and we will go ahead and answer those there. And at the end of today's presentation, we will stop the recording. We will open up the lines so that we can take live questions as well. So tomorrow also, you'll get an email with the recording. Feel free to share that with other colleagues within your organization. If you wish to be taken off that distribution in the future, just go ahead and email me back at devictor@microsoft.com, and I will take you off that distribution in the future. With that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Bonnie and to Pam. Thank you, ladies, for bringing this topic to our customers today and helping them get the most out of their investments.
Good morning, or good afternoon, good morning for everyone. I'm Pamela Hatfield. I'm a security specialist here at Microsoft. I support our Southeast states. Look forward to speaking with all of y'all.
Good afternoon. My name is Vani Dadilla. I'm Atlanta-based, so Pam and I are Atlanta-based. So I'm looking forward to this really practical, actionable session. A little fun fact, the past weekend, I actually did a mini hackathon by myself to build my school activities for my child. So that's what I do. No, I don't do that but yeah, last weekend was like a little different. So Pam I just gave her a preview, but I just want to ask the audience, if you have to live for a year somewhere, for a year, anywhere in the world, where would that be and why? Put your comments in the chat. Just want to, I like to see like what people like to do and where they like to live. I will start. I want to live in Costa Rica. Why? Because it's got everything, mountains, water everywhere. So, Pam?
I would love to live in Japan. I've visited before, but I love the culture. I love the history behind it. A little bit about myself. My background is a history major before I got into cybersecurity. So really would love to live there for a year.
Nice. Hawaii, Germany, Craig, and Thailand. That's my second place. Oh, nice. Nice. Keep going. UK. Oh, Galapagos. How did I forget that? Good. Oh, we have interesting places right there. Awesome. Keep it coming, folks. Today, again, as Deb mentioned, this is all about security and defining the securities and defining the security roles. We talk about digital transformation, and everybody wants to build the apps, build the flows, but the challenges of the digital transformation, right? 80% of the governance challenges come during the digital transformation, and that increasing the risk. It's nice to have an app built. It's nice to have a chatbot built, but what's behind that? The security, the risk is real. How do we manage the security? How do we manage the challenges of digital transformation? In reality, right, 80%, not just the commercial organization that's pretty relevant to the government organizations too, is what about the security? So those security policies, procedures were designed for paper-based transformation, but as the digital transformation is going on, we need to up that game, and we're going to show you, Pam and I are going to show you how you're going to deal with those challenges. And, for example, if, you have a 311 app and somebody wants to access that, how are you going to ward off those attackers? Same thing, as you're doing the digital transformation, you're adding another layer of surfaces, like whether it's on cloud, SaaS, the chatbots, the SMS. There is another add-on application. There's an add-on connector. How do you ward off those attack surfaces? Well, security becomes complex, but it also is very critical for the organizations to take care of and secure those attack surfaces. And doubling that, right? And oh yeah, we have this transformation, but also governance challenges, because each of those divisions and agencies of the government have different siloed secure policy. Like, a court management, a court case management system has a different policy and governance versus a DMV, a Department of Motor Vehicles organization. And how do you make those fragmented governance processes and create one unified or one uniform policy, and also at the same time manage it with zero friction, or maybe less friction, I guess we should call, and compliance and manual. Throughout this, each organization has different policies to be, you have IRS 1075 or PCI privacy laws or the CGIS. And how are you going to manage that when as the digital transformation is adding to that at the speed of light? Your auditors are scrambling to your spreadsheets, to the manual process. It's not just a headache for the auditors, but also for government users, like and people who are approving, who are doing that email approvals. So all this comes to like need for that security evolution. What do I do? Like provide, what does Microsoft provide through the securities? Provide that one single consistent view of identities across the devices, across the apps, across the agencies, across the environment, and automation of those requests, approvals, deprovisioning of the security access or deprovisioning of the access, and use of real-time signals for endpoint identities or networks, and also ability to embed workflows based on the departments. And that's what Microsoft tries to provide and provides with the security first philosophy. With that said, most of you probably saw this this slide most of forever, right from Microsoft Power Platform, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Pages, Power BI, rapidly doing your digital transformation with data connectors, with AI builders, and and your Dataverse expanding, and Power Automate, managed environments. How do we manage that? How do we have that security around that Microsoft Power Platform? I'm not going to go into that because you had all other sessions of what Microsoft Power Platform platform brings you, but the security layer, everything starts with the Entra ID. Your Entra ID has to be strong. So when I always like to give this example, right? Like Entra ID is having that strong door to your house. If you have a weak door and you have tens of locks, it really doesn't make any sense to have that locks without the Entra ID. So strong Entra ID, when we talk about the Power Platform in the real world, everything starts with the Entra ID. When we get Entra ID right, every layer of the security becomes, whether it's environment, resource permissions, connectors, they become easy to manage. If you get Entra ID wrong, just adding those logs with the weak door. It really doesn't make sense, right? So from a tenant access perspective, at the top of the Entra ID is that tenant access and isolation. You want to make sure that who is coming into that door, how are they coming, what are the conditions they're coming. For example, like a Department of Transportation has rolled out a Power App based permitting system, like Power App from contractors, and an inspector tries to log in from a hotel lobby using open Wi-Fi. Entra ID's conditional access stops it before it gets to the Power App. So this is the door, and even before you get to Power App, the Entra ID needs to be set up. So, how do you do that? Having that MFA required for all the external users and privileges. Device compliance, only state-managed devices can reach the production app. So that's how you set up strong identity and isolation of the tenants with Entra ID. Environment access and strategy. And I'm saying that, right, from you can have within one tenant, you can have different environments. And that environments could be dev, prod, test. You have an intern or a temporary worker who could work on the development environment, but you have actual inspectors working on the production environment. You want to set up these groups properly within the Entra ID groups to make that powerful security around. And, to set up the groups like, for example, you have dev group with Entra ID can build only certain things, and you can have Entra ID groups with who can only build certain, so you can have certain Power Automate flows, or certain business user who can test certain releases. So thinking through that strategy of Entra ID groups makes the big difference in setting up that strong security with environment boundaries and clean separation of tenants. And also the resource permissions, right? From, if a city has a multiple apps in its environment, a public facing 311 app or internal code enforcement app or internal equipment case, they all can live in the same production environment, but each of these apps, you need to set up the group saying who can access what and who can run the flows in what app, in what environment. So this is that we want to think through it and how we want to do it from an Entra ID perspective. So I'm going to take a pause here and ask if you have any questions, please put it in chat, and we have people looking at the chat and answering the questions. So once we have that the resource permissions, then you want to have the connector access and data loss policies. You want to think about what are those connector access, who has the access to the business connectors, the non-business connectors, and the data loss policies that you want. So, the next layer of we could have connectors to Outlook, to SharePoint, to SQL, or you could, most of the time when you're building an app, you have these connectors to your on-premise gateways and your other line of systems. This is the data loss prevention policies that you need to set up, So for example, a state agency has a Power App that residents apply for benefits. Data is stored in the Dataverse, but IT is worried that Maker could accidentally, right? And somebody who's doing an Power Automate can accidentally send the personal information, PI information to their Google. Potentially could happen. This is where you want to set up business connectors, where you would set the Dataverse, the SharePoint, the on-premise gateways, or the other connectors, the business line of business connectors you want to set up as a business connectors versus blocked or non-business, which would mean your your Hotmails, your Gmails, your Dropboxes, or anything that you want to think about. So again, planning becomes really very important in terms of setting up the security, thinking what is needed. Again, going back to this Entra ID and Entra ID groups. So when you set up this data loss policies, and when somebody tries to put a Power Automate together and say, hey, let me send this data to my personal Gmail, the Power Automate doesn't work. The flow doesn't work because you set up your DLP policies with the Entra ID groups in a really powerful way. So again, then that translates from Entra ID groups into your Dataverse, right? Your production environment could have could have a wide range of production environments, right? Like an inspector, say from a region A, can see his or her stuff from region A, and the inspector from region B can look at his or her stuff from region B, but the supervisor can look at it. And then these are the groups that you set up at Entra ID. So I'm going to take a pause here, and I saw a chat and somebody's responding to that, right? Pam, like whoever is looking at it. So, okay. So the granular you want to go, the granular level of security from the Entra, you want to set up these groups to have the granular security, but it has to be centrally controlled, right? That's where the Entra identities and groups come in picture. And it all makes, looks complicated. It really isn't, because when somebody inspector moves from one region to another, an employee moves from one division to another, it just becomes easy as moving that employee or that contractor from one group to another, and everything percolates down from Entra ID to the environment groups. So if your leadership asks, what's the powerful, what's the one thing that you want to get it right from a security perspective? It's like your Entra ID. Entra ID establishes the identity, the boundary with MFA, conditional access, compliance, and the least privilege access that you want to define. So once you have that from the Entra ID, the tenant access. The tenant access is again controlled based on the Entra ID based, and with the user, with the group, the device, and the location. So for that example, we said there's somebody inspector wanting to log in from a hotel room with an open Wi-Fi. It's looking at that user, the device, the location, and it's blocking that access. So Entra ID token policies, the issuance, and the MFA. All that brings into picture from securing your app, securing the access to the resources. Sorry. It just jumped on me, sorry about that. So the next level is that environments, right? The environments here are the containers. They're separate resources for different roles, different security needs and audiences. Every tenant has a default environment. That's the default environment, like anybody can build the workflows, anybody can do the Power Automate flows, can do the apps, but the environment is one where the admin has access, and this is the environment is defined by the geo, by the location. You control who has access to do what in that environment. So based on your agency, based on the environment, based on the scope of that app, you give that security, and the environment becomes that little container. Environment again is bound by geography. So sometimes you have a certain geography, like saying the data needs of Massachusetts, say DMV needs to sit in certain geo. That's where the environment will be used, and the admins, the global admins will control who can create the environments. So again, very, very critical to have that policy, who can create environments, and that environments can be created through the Power Platform Admin Center. Again, the default environments, people can go play on it. They don't offer no permissions, no permission controls. There's no default or restricted to the specific admin. That's why you want to create this container of environments so you can control who gets access to what, who can develop apps in that environment, who can develop Power Automate flows, who can create resources in that environment. Again, the multiple layers, right? From the Entra ID perspective, the resource permissions. Well, the resources are here are the connectors, who can create the connectors, who can use the Power Automate, and who can do who can create those apps. They need to have access on the Entra ID to be able to create to create Power Automate, right? People can create Power Automate, but if they don't have data access, they can not access that data. So it'll be blocked off right there. So that's the resource permissions that you set up in Entra ID. So again, that Entra ID is like a high level information or a high level setup that you want to do in the Power Platform world to create that powerful security region behind that. And again, resource level access, right? Each of them, again, you're setting that groups in the resource level access, who can edit, who can co-own the components, who can access the components, who can only use the components, and who can create the power virtual agents, or like, you call Copilot agents within that environment. Those resource level access, right? You can create that, but if you don't have access to create for the data for the agent, or you cannot for the data for the Power App, for the data for Power Automate, you cannot really create it. So that's the level of thought and planning that needs to go while setting up the Entra ID. Once you get the Entra ID right, you're set from that perspective. So data policies, as you're setting up data prevention laws, policies, data preventions, they act as a guardrails to prevent users from unintentionally exposing the data. Like the example I gave, somebody doing a Power Automate, they can't really accidentally send the PII data into their Gmail. So data policies help you establish the guardrails. And scoped environment and tenant level offering that offers the flexibility of the policies. And the data loss prevention using the business and non-business and blocked. So those are the things, right? Sometimes you have users and you have social media to be blocked, right? You can't get anything, or you cannot publish anything onto the social media. You can block that. That's what you want to think about in terms of the functionality and in terms of the security. Have that. What is important is the security, right? So having that blocked, having the business connectors, having the non-business connectors. This is what you want to define the data policies for the data loss prevention. With that said, you probably will have a lot of questions on, hey, what does that mean when we have to create an agent? So that's where the fun part comes, and Pam is going to go through it and how you set up that the security through Purview.
Yeah, so Purview is our data governance platform. And so when we think about data governance, there's a lot of different things within the Purview suite that we provide and we do. I think some of the big ones that we talk about now is data solution posture management around AI. And I'm going to just flip into a demo to show you what all's involved in that. But to what was talked about earlier, data loss prevention, identities. All of these are really important when we start talking about data. Purview does have components of that with things like insider risk management. We always hope that no one internally is doing something malicious, but at the end of the day, it could be accidental, it could be malicious, but we need to understand what people are doing, the data they're accessing. Are they doing things that they shouldn't be doing? Do they have privileges they're not supposed to have? And that ties back into Entra. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly here. See if I can get this to work. And then we're just going to dive into the DSPM, or Data Solution Posture Management. We have all of our acronyms here, and start going through kind of how Purview works, because like I said, it is a platform. It's designed to help you understand where is your data, protecting that data, and making sure that you don't have users that are allowing data or other pieces to slip out of your environment. And so if you haven't been in Purview before, this is what our Data Solution Posture Management looks like. When you first come into it, it will tell you all these different ways to get started, but this is really a one-place area to look at all the different things that you can look at from a AI perspective, be it Copilot, be it Copilot and Fabric now, be it we're even, like I said, we're very vendor agnostic in this area. But I want to take you through some of the more interesting points here, because it all does revolve around everything that Purview does. So one of the great things here is that when you come in here, you can immediately see the different types of interactions over time of what your end users are doing. Now, I will tell you, throughout this demo environment, you will see a lot of Security Copilot. Our demo environment, or my demo environment, is geared more towards the security side of the house, but we will try to pick more of the areas that are in Fabric and those types of pieces, but we'll show you some of the cool features. So once we dive into some of these, we're going to look at this sensitive interactions per AI app. So we can actually look at what's going on within these applications, and I can go into something we call our Activity Explorer. And so we have different sensitivity info types. Now, you can go in and you can create your own sensitive info types. We have ones that we've already created, and we can look at where are these sensitive info types being pushed out of, or where are they at in the agents. And so I'm going to change this. So you can come in here and I can say, hey, I want to look at, as I said, everything in here, Security Copilot mainly. But if I wanted to, I can look at any of the different types of applications that may be in this. And so let me look at the app here. So I'm going to load this. Takes a few seconds here because it's digging through it. But you can see here we have Azure AI, and some other things here from our Azure AI piece that we've done here. And so I can come in here now and I can look at what are people doing in this, and it'll pull all of this information. So some of this is Power Platform connectors. Contoso is just the name of our demo environment. And you can see here all the different things. Who's the user? And so going back to the identity, who's the user? And then what is the sensitive info types? So if I come over here, is there a sensitive info type? Well, here's some credit card numbers. You'll see Project Obsidian. Project Obsidian is our fake top secret information that we have in here. So anytime you see Project Obsidian, this would be something as a customer or client that you would probably put in here that you don't want someone to exfiltrate data out of, that maybe is secrets or something that is supposed to be highly sensitive. We've just named it Project Obsidian. And so you can actually dig a little bit deeper into this and look at the department, the user risk, and we can go in, and I'll do this in a minute. We'll look at one of these users and look at their insider risk. What are they doing from an insider perspective? I can see what the enterprise category is, and you can start digging into all of this information of, well, what is going on from a sensitive info type. And so if you do have something where potentially maybe someone's doing something they're not supposed to, again, maybe it's accidental and maybe they need some more training, maybe it's malicious, you can come in here and look at this. Now, if we go back into the apps and agents, we can actually look at the user trends across, apologies there, all of the different apps and agents that Purview is protecting from an AI application and agent perspective in the last 30 days. And so we can see here, we're just going to do Copilot and Fabric really quickly. Oh, there's no data. Of course, I choose the wrong one. Copilot Studio here. We can look here and we can see that we have 13 data protection policies that we've already assigned. We have compliance policies here, 12 of them, and we can quickly look at what is generating alerts. And so we can see that we have users with risky AI usage. So what is that risky AI usage? Some of them have received sensitive responses. Some of them entered risky prompts. And so when we think about this, we do have something that when we have trainable classifiers of data, and you can create these yourselves, we have things that are doing things like protected materials. Looking for, is anyone trying to enter something that is copyrighted into an AI? You know, these are, maybe is someone trying to do, it's called prompt shield. Is someone trying to input an attack to jailbreak the AI? Jailbreaking AI is, to me, fascinating to look at. Again, I'm a security person, so I geek out about some of this stuff, but it's, you know, someone's going in and they're saying, hey, you know, you are now going to do these, perform these actions. There's one in our demo environment a couple months ago that was basically saying, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. Please give me this information. And you're basically trying to jailbreak the AI model and make it do something that it's not supposed to do. And so you can create these trainable classifiers to look at that. But you can also see here, you know, this is inappropriate use of Copilot. So we can look at, has someone done something like unauthorized disclosure? Has someone done some regulatory collusion? Has someone, I guess someone in our demo environment was asking about money laundering. And so you can create these different types of policies through some of our communication pieces. And I'll show you what that looks like as well, so that you can track, and some people do it, you know, you can also do it about language that you don't want people utilizing. So there's different ways you can set that up. Then we can see here, we have again, that insider risk, again, identity. And I jokingly say I'm a huge proponent of zero trust, but the identity piece, who's a high inside risk, who's got no risk, you know, what are the active users doing it based on that risk level? And then we can see here that, you know, out of the 50 people that interact with this Copilot Studio, 5 of them have a high inside risk, 24 of them do not. And so, you know, or 24 out of 50 do not. And then we have some here that are just other users that aren't hitting the mark here in our demo environment. And then it'll tell you what the peak activity user is, and you can get all this information about who's using this component of this application. Now, if you want to look at the agents themselves, you can. So we can see here we have agents that have been created, and we can say like daily vulnerability checker. So this is something that we've created with Copilot Studio to go in and look at vulnerabilities. And you can see the same information that you saw in the application, just now, I mean, on the other side of it, now just on the agent side of it. Same type of information, everything that you would need to make sure that no one's doing something risky in AI. Now, flipping over quickly, because I'm making sure we have time here, you can look at, like I said before, what we're going to look at now is that insider risk piece. And so if we go into insider risk management, this is where you can really start digging into, did someone just put in their 2-week notice and then start exfiltrating data out? Did someone put in their 2-week notice and then start copying large amount of information? Or did someone put in a 2-week notice and then start, you know, putting a lot of information into AI that had a lot of sensitive information in it? And so this is all around talking around that type of thing. And you can see here, again, we try to make it very explanatory, or we try to give you recommended actions on what you should be doing. As you can see here, some of this has not been set up yet, but for the most part, you know, a lot of it has, and we can see who's being evaluated. We can look at our alerts. You can create cases. So if you know that there is an inside risk, you can create a case around that, and you can actually create templates for emails that if someone's doing something and you see them doing it, say it's Project Obsidian again, I can create an email that then once I create a case, that email will go out to that end user, and I'll show you what the template looks like. Basically saying that, hey, we've noticed that you're doing something with this data that you shouldn't be doing, as a reminder. And then we can look at all the different policies here. So we're going to go in and we're going to actually look at a case. And we're going to look at the AI test case here. So here's a high risk test case that we've created. And again, you can see here, you can assign the case, we can resolve the case. Again, like I said, you can send the email for notice. There is automation you can do. So there's some automation with Power Automate flows that you can do around this so that the email gets sent out automatically. And then you can see here, you can do all kinds of different things. I should have forewarned, if you are in GCC, there are some features and functionalities in this demo that are not yet available in GCC. I will try to point those out. So things like the embedded Copilot for security is not yet available in Purview. I think that is something that just wanted to point out that. But for the most part, you can see most of these here. And so if we wanted to go at the alerts, this is going to break down what's going on. So we can see here that someone had a departure, and you can hook this up to your HR systems. So this can be automated across the HR system as well. And so we can see here that we had this alert history, and we can see that there was 20 events here where sensitive responses were received from Copilot. And if we wanted to dig into that, we can. I can come in here, and I'll get rid of that for a minute, and I can look at all of the sensitive responses that came from Copilot. And I can come in and I can look at it, and you can see the workload, I can see the actor upon, the operations, the dates. This one doesn't have a classifier match, but we do get what the sensitive info type is. So it was an IP address and all full names. We do have a confidence score. So when you set up sensitive info types, you will set up a confidence score around them based on certain parameters. And then you'll have a count here. And so it'll tell you how many times in the document. And so if we go back, we can actually start then looking at the user activity. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you a nice scatter plot. I'll show you a better one than this one, but this will actually show you across the time frame. So let's just do 1 month. Might not have anything on this 1 month. Nope. But so for like this 3-month one, we can see here that they did some things here where a sensitive response was received from Copilot, and then there was a user account that was soft deleted here. Now, we're saying this is tied together. If we go back and we look at maybe a case that has a little bit more depth in it, see if we have one that has a little bit more depth for you to look at. Let's do this data exfiltration one. So this is actually an incident response one. And we look at the user activity here on the scatter plots. So you can see here now we have a lot more. And this is where sensitive SharePoint files were accessed. So again, you have all of this information where the triggering event was an exfiltration activity. That could be via SharePoint, that could be via an AI, that could be via, them putting in a 2-week notice. So there's different things that trigger this. And then you can start looking at and seeing what activities going on for them to understand, hey, these are things that we need to look at. And so you can actually go and look at your users. Your users will be assigned a risk score based on this. And so we can see here, like Adele here, has a very high insider risk severity. And we can look at why, and this is why. So there's a lot of activities that have been going on that have caused this. And again, we can see the triggering event here. And so again, this is all about the idea of data governance with identity at this point. And then we can also, again, we have lots of reports. So if you want to look at the reporting, but like I was saying, you can create your own notice templates that then you can send out. So once you start a case, we can send out a notice template. And so this one's a very simple one that just basically says, hey, based on your behavior related to Project Obsidian, we've identified this risky behavior. You can create whatever notice template you want to. This is very customizable. There's also something called adaptive protection. And adaptive protection is basically where you have these different levels that you can assign to your inside users. And so you can see here, this is data theft by departing users. We've assigned built-in conditions. So if they perform at least 3 sequences, and these sequences are what I was showing you before, and these sequences have a certain score tied to them, they're going to get an elevated risk level. And so this is something that then will alert on. So you can create these types of different insider risk levels. I don't think anyone here has one at the moment in this demo environment. They don't. But if they did, this is where you would do it. You can also have the data loss prevention policies here. And so this is our DLP policy that has a condition for insider risk level. So if they hit a certain level, I'll go edit this so you can see it. Give it 1 moment. So right here, we're going to use adaptive protection to give a warn with override. So if they reach that certain level, they're going to get a warn with an override that they, for attempting to paste or upload sensitive information into AI assistants in Edge, Chrome, Firefox. So again, this is something that you can create for your end users. You can establish admin units within Purview. If you have different, and I see this in my customers that have maybe they have one tenant and they have different departments, or they have different agencies that sit in a single tenant, you can create admin units for that, so that then you can have different types of policies for each admin unit, but you can assign the admin units, and then you can say, where do you want to apply these different DLP policies? And so you can see here. And again, we do have, we can do the on-premise, we can do Fabric and Power BI. So there's a lot of different ways that we can actually do DLP policies. I'm going to go back after that. Now, if we go into the other piece that I wanted to talk about really quickly, that's communication compliance. Communications compliance is the one that's going to let you look at inappropriate text. Again, that thing around prompt shielding, protected materials. Are people doing things that maybe, like the gambling one or whatever they were trying to do? So you can create policies around this inappropriate content. And so we have some that, like right here is DeepSeek. So if someone's trying to use DeepSeek, there's a policy name around that. But I'm going to just create one so you can see it. So we're just going to create an inappropriate content. You can be very custom to what users you're using. You have to select reviewers. These are people that are going to be reviewing it. I'm going to choose myself. My name in this demo environment, Sophia. If you're like, who's Sophia? That's me. So we can do Sophia. And then we're going to customize the policy. So again, same thing. You can come in here. There are admin units. So if we wanted to, we have an admin unit in this environment. It's Cloud PC admins. It would be assigned just to them. Then if we wanted to go next, we can also select users and groups within the organization. We have my user here. I'm the reviewer. That's my username. If you want multiple reviewers, you can. If you need to exclude users and groups from a certain policy, you can do that here. We can also do the locations. And so this is where we can come in and say, we want to do generative AI. And so I want to choose all the co-pilots and then all of this. And then you can also do this generative AIs. This is through our Defender for Cloud Apps. So if there's other generative AIs in the browser, we can look at it through Defender for Cloud Apps. So we can add all of these, and then we'll go next. And then we can choose, do we want it to be internal? Do we want it to be outbound or inbound? Oops, that's what happens when you get a little clicky happy. And so we can choose that. We can come down here, and this is where we have the trainable classifiers. And so we can choose, we have ones that we've already created. So I can go in here, I can add a trainable classifier. So we have these right here that are already created. Like I said, we have prompt shield, protected materials. These are specific only to AI, these two. But the other ones, you can do all of these other ones: corporate sabotage, someone trying to do some money laundering, unauthorized disclosure, is someone trying to do something with the stock, customer complaints, discrimination, threat. So there's a good amount of these. So you can do all of that and put those in there. If you want to do this, there is optical character recognition. So if someone has embedded or attached an image that's printed or handwritten, you can do OCR. And then this is how much you want to reduce the amount of content to review. So this is basically, this one might generate a large number, but you can choose what you want to do on the review. I'm putting it at 100%. I want to review everything. And then this is basically, if something's an email blasting service, say you get a bunch of bulk email from a newsletter, you'll just be able to review a report containing the senders that were filtered out. You're not going to get everything. So you can do a lot of different things. We can also do conditions here. So we can say the sender is, this is detects emails from senders you specifically want to look at. We can also do, let's see here, if we want to look at retention labels. So if this is something where you've applied a retention label, that it's a legal document or something that has a retention label, then we can do what retention label has been applied so we can look at it. So again, you can get very customizable with the communication compliance and how you're looking at it. So if we go back into that DSPM for AI, I can get my mouse to work here. a little testy now. And we want to go into really quickly. You can look at all of these policies that are created specifically for AI around Purview and for your information here. And so we can see here that we have our DLP policies. And so this is everything that has been created that's been tagged with AI components in it. And so we have here some block sensitive info from AI sites. We have where Copilot can, restrict access. We have, discover those sensitive prompts in AI assistance. Then we have down here our insider risk management that we were talking about before. And so these are all the policies that we've created to go around data theft by departing users. So this gives you all of your policy indicators that we have. So we can see here, we have sharing our SharePoint files, creating or copying files to USB. So again, you can look at really quickly, right here's the ones around AI. Entering prompt attacks, entering risky prompts in Copilot, and you can see all of the information around what is an AI. And then again, we have our communications compliance. So everything that we were talking around with communications compliance. So this is around DeepSeek. So if anyone's mentioning DeepSeek, we're going to get an alert on that. If anyone's doing our super secret project Obsidian and M365 Copilot, we're going to get an alert on that. If there's something from a regulatory compliance perspective, we're going to get an alert on that. And you can see here all the data sources. So again, really looking at what's going on in the environment. Now, I've got about 2 minutes and I do want to open it up to questions, but from an incident perspective, I do want to show this really quickly. This ties it all in together from an XDR perspective. So as Microsoft, we're very much a platform-based solution. So we talked around Entra ID, we talked around Purview, we have also Defender. This is a Defender portal where we've actually pulled in information from Purview. And I wanted to show you this because it shows you basically an attack story with GenAI where we've matched DLP policies and we've matched a user. This is Parvin, our user. And we can look here, I love a good blast graph, but we can look at what actually the story was and what happened here. And so we can see that Parvin was doing something that triggered a DLP match here. And I can go in and I can look at what was this DLP match, what was going on with it, all the evidence that I need to look at for it, what was the user's credentials. This is the policy matches that were found in this violation. So again, we have a lot of projects here that we've matched. And here's our rule description. So again, this is all around the actual doing the data. This is actually classifying the data. So this was classified to be highly confidential, all employees. It was Copilot restricted. So it shouldn't have been in any of the AIs. And so we can see here what went on. And we can just keep on going with what went on, that it was blocked. There's information in Teams. There's information in OneDrive. And so again, this is just showing how everything's working together from that Purview perspective with Entra, with users, because right here we can, that's devices, with devices to see what's going on in the environment and making sure that no one's trying to exfiltrate that data that's sensitive out of the environment. So I'm going to stop there. I think this was the last thing that I wanted to share, and I'll stop sharing here, and then I want to open it up for questions.
So Pam, there's one question